Thank you for joining the latest Service Department News webinar. This is the first webinar in a brand new series sponsored by the residents. And today we're going to be talking about the transformation of the travel buyer. For those of you who might not know me, my name's Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of Service Department News. If you don't know Service Department News, shame on you, but now you do. We are an online multimedia trade publication, and we cover the global service department, apart hotel, and extended stay industry. As I mentioned, this webinar, brand new webinar series, has been sponsored by The Residents, a luxury service apartment brand in London. And we're going to play a short video for you today so you can learn more about them. And if you want to find out even more information, the links to the Residents website has been popped into the chat. So a very quick overview of how today's webinar is going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes in conversation today with our panelists, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from our audience members. So if you do have any questions, please submit these using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens. If they're relevant to the topic that we happen to be talking about, I'll ask them there and then. If not, we'll set aside some time at the end. And everybody that has registered to this webinar will receive a copy of the recording within 48 hours. So let's meet our speakers today, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, and I will move from left to right as per your screens. So Beverly, let's kick off with yourself. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Eloise. I'm really pleased to be here. My name's Beverly King. I am VP of Client Partnerships at AltoVita. I joined AltoVita a little bit earlier this year in the spring, and I have a background in global mobility and business development. And before that, actually in-house within various roles across HR, reward, global mobility.
Congrats on the new role, and I hope you're settling in, Beverly.
Not so new now, but yeah, it's gone very quickly, the few months. Thanks.
Thanks, Beverly. And Claire, welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining. A short introduction, please.
Yes, hi everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm having my own technical difficulties today, so I'm currently joined from my iPhone. I'm Claire Bryson. I've been with Edyn now for just over 4 years, and I'm responsible for our extended stay sales generation, supporting direct corporate clients as well as third parties with their travel, mobility and relocation requirements. For anyone not familiar with Edyn, we are a owner and operator of just over 3,500 service apartments and apart hotels, with our core markets being London, across the UK, Ireland, Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, and then later this year we'll be opening new properties in Portugal, France and Denmark.
Oh, best of luck with the launches there, Claire. And no doubt we will probably touch on the challenges of technology later on in today's conversation. Paul, you're next, my friend. Over to you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, my name's Paul Deere. I took that picture about 20 years ago, so apologies for the one on screen. As you can tell, the haircut has changed slightly. I've just clicked over 32 years in business travel, so 25 years in travel management company, consulting, account management, etc., running the supplier relations end, and then moved to SAP Concur nearly 5 years ago now. So I have the pleasure of looking after all suppliers outside of the US for Concur. So yeah, very much looking forward to today.
Thanks a lot, Paul. And last but by no means least, Suilla, over to you.
Thank you, Eloise. Hi, everybody. My name is Swahila Tarabit. I'm the head of corporate travel services for AltoVita. I'm actually celebrating today my second anniversary at AltoVita. So for those of you who are not familiar with our group, we are a family-owned business headquartered in Dubai, and we are partnering with more than 200 brands across 5 different divisions: retail, automotive, financial services, real estate, and our most famous brands are M&S. I'm sure you're very familiar with this one, IKEA, Toyota, Lexus, and so on and so forth. So I'm supporting the group with the transition actually from in-house travel agency to the implementation of a brand new corporate travel program.
Thank you so much, Suilla, and thanks to all our speakers for their time today. All LinkedIn profiles have been popped into the chat. I do encourage you all to connect long after this conversation has ended, because we do have a lot to get through today, and I'm sure there's going to be much more to carry on after we finish in about the next 15 minutes or so. So before we jump into our main conversation, I always like to run through some context. And these are stories that we have published on Service Department News over the last, say, 6 to 12 months or so. And to really sort of bring it to the fore, last week, SAP Concur released the findings from its Global Business Travel Survey, sharing insights from close to 4,000 business travelers and 600 travel managers. And we're going to be discussing some of these findings later in our conversation today. And at the Business Travel Show just last week, even today at the launch of the GSER report, which is the Global Service Department Industry Report, content distribution or content fragmentation has been flagged as a major challenge for suppliers of business travel. And the other 2 stories on your screens explore the role of legacy channels, such as the GDS, as well as new booking platforms, such as, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Yovivo, which has launched a new feature, this is quite interesting, that will allow any hotel property to offer extended stays of more than 1 month. Now, on the next slide, and to stick with the accommodation angle, Club Quarters Hotels, which does already offer extended stays, has recently launched its first standalone service department site in Texas. And I've covered similar stories on the sister website to Service Department News, Boutique Hotel News, where I have seen hoteliers extending their offering into service departments and or residences, which begs the question of, with new supply coming to market, how will these service departments, what role will they play in travel programs moving forwards? And with this new supply, I imagine we're going to see tech solutions or more tech solutions launched to create service department travel programs. And on a larger scale is the consolidation of travel tech companies to capture greater market share, as you can see by the other 2 screens on your other 2 headlines on your screens, sorry. So I hope that's provided some background to today's conversation. Let's talk about travel buyers, travel management, and I would like to kick off with a question to Paul. I flagged your report that SAP Concur released last week. Paul, can you please share some key insights shared by the business traveller in the latest survey?
Yeah, sure, happy to. And just to put some context around it, we interviewed 3,750 travellers in 25 markets. So it's a global coverage of this this particular survey, and it's the 6th annual one that we've done. So we compare to previous years and so on and so forth. I mean, there were some interesting factors this year. Specifically, I mean, 67% of business travels have got requirements now where they have to work in a pre-trip environment. In other words, translating that, travel managers now are obviously having to control costs, and 67% now are having to get that pre-authorization before they even start looking for a service department, a hotel, an air, and so on and so forth. And this is quite key because the travelers themselves believe that actually traveling is the way, because they're more remote now, traveling is a way they see their career enhancements. And so therefore, again, 67% think it's absolutely critical that they get to meet both their bosses and obviously senior colleagues in the corridors where they're working. And with the remote working, they're finding that very difficult. I myself, as I've just mentioned previously, didn't see my own boss for 2.5 years as I started in Concur just before COVID. And how does that impact your career and so on and so forth? It's just sort of interesting viewpoints coming out of this. There's a very big reduction in flexibility from what's being allowed to be purchased. So that cost recovery piece at the moment, or the cost cutting piece, I'm sorry, at this present time, 91% in the last year have experienced costs being reduced. So before it was about traveller coming back to work, travellers going back out to see customers, and cost wasn't necessarily the key driver. Certainly now we've seen that coming through as one of the key points that we're seeing. And I suppose lastly, just to sort of pick out some of the highlights, I suppose, 92% now will decline a business trip for reasons such as safety, sustainability, social reasons, and also in some cases where they can't actually extend it into personal stays alongside the business trip. But when you get to 92% of 3,750 people saying this, it's quite a step forward. It's now down to, if I don't feel comfortable or safe, I'm very conscious of my own sustainability footprint, but also there's the dichotomy where I must go and see my boss because I feel that's career enhancing. So you've got a lot of sort of mixed messages coming through, but certainly cost and travel coming together and being reduced. And of course, that vision of 92% saying it's about me now and looking after my business trip rather than the company sending me somewhere. So I don't know if that helps. It just sort of gives you a few of the flavors that we brought out from the survey.
And to follow up, how do you see these insights and these key findings shaping the role of the travel manager and how they actually pull together future travel programs moving forwards?
I've done a number of articles over the years saying I wouldn't want to be a travel manager, and I mean that very respectfully. I don't know which way I would turn. There's so many things going on. You now have to be a sustainability expert. You now need to be a regulatory expert because you need to know the rules and it's your responsibility. You need to be a commercial expert. You've got to be negotiating the fares. You've got to be negotiating with the suppliers and so on and so forth. Health and safety, duty of care. The list goes on and on and on and on. But at the moment, because of the cost constraints and the sustainability reporting that's required, you're seeing now that actually there's a more focus from that travel management community in those particular areas. So I think the environment is working with the travel managers directly in those specific areas that probably has taken over more of their time than, should we say, the commercial side of the business at this present time.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Suilla, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here. I actually covered some of the key findings from that report, and I was quite interested to hear how some business travelers were actually declining opportunities to travel for business if that particular trip did not offer the flexibility to extend for personalized stays. So you're looking now at workations, blended travel, leisure, however you want to package that term. So with the rise of hybrid working, as Paul has mentioned, how is that shaping your role and your strategy at AltoVita?
Yeah. So Paul, I don't know why you're saying that you wouldn't want to be a travel manager. I think it's a super cool job and it's super exciting now, especially with this challenging environment we are evolving in. But I definitely agree and echo with what you said. I think that to understand really the challenges we are facing now, we need to take a couple of steps back and look at the journey of travel management. So we have the pre-COVID era where traditionally travel used to sit under procurement, and we were really focusing at cost, reducing cost, and we were not really looking at traveler well-being or rules of travel, allowing flexibility. Then we had COVID, travel was completely frozen, nobody was traveling. So then when the world started reopening up, we needed to find ways to make travel appealing to our community. So we started introducing more flexible rules, because people had the sentiment that it was not safe traveling. You know, there were a lot of regulations. They needed to be aware of the vaccination and status and the tests in the different countries. So we needed to make it more appealing. So this is where we started being more flexible, allowing leisure, allowing more flexibility also in the class of services. And then people started traveling again. Now there is a lot of demand. The industry is suffering a lot. I mean, there is a lot of demand, so the costs are on the rise. And we, as travel manager, we are like, whoa, what do we do now? But we cannot go back to how we used to manage travel before, after allowing this flexibility. So I think that we need to find a way to balance costs, saving and flexibility for our travelers, because for me, a travel policy needs to be as appealing as a total rewards policy in a company. It's really something that can attract and retain talent in a company. So what we need to do, we need to embrace this new era where we need to combine the previous eras and make travel appealing in a geopolitical environment that is a little bit challenging, and also keeping the cost under control in an industry where costs keep going up and up and up. So like you said, Paul, we actually as travel managers need to wear multiple hats. We need to ensure that our travelers are safe. That's the first criteria for me. We need to ensure that we give them all the resources for them to understand what needs to be done in case there is an unexpected change during their trip. We need to ensure that their booking and traveling experience is also smooth and reduce the frictions during the processes. And at the same time, we need to ensure that we reduce our impact on the environment and select the right suppliers to ensure that we control the cost. So it's not an easy task, but it's very exciting.
If you're like me and you don't like to shy away from a challenge, I think you'll take this one hands-on, Suella.
I'll try.
And Claire, to bring you into the conversation here, we're talking about the mix of to go back to the rise of hybrid working, and I can see we've had a question from Amit about Amit about the length of stay, which bodes so well for my next question to you, Claire. Are you seeing any shifts in terms of lead times, average length of stay, and how are rates performing?
Yeah, I think, I mean, all accommodation operators have seen some form of shift in kind of travel behaviours over the past 18 months, and that shift will really differ depending on the type of property you operate and, then what determines, your core client target market. So I think on length of stay, our average length of stay, edyn will vary across different brands that we offer, but in corporate markets as an operator, we're seeing, shorter lead times, and maybe opposite to other providers and third-party agents. We're also seeing a slightly shorter length of stay with, those traditional extended stay segments such as relocation not growing as much as perhaps other business travel segments. But we're definitely seeing a growth of length of stay coming in those more transient segments where there's seemingly a greater acceptance of the apart hotels onto those traditional hotel style programs. So I think in terms of rates, the rise of utilities and general operating costs feels like it's stabilized somewhat over the past 6 months, either stabilized or maybe we're just getting used to this being the norm. But there's always going to be a need for some of that cost to be passed on to the client in terms of a slightly higher rate. With the inflationary costs in any business, we wouldn't be a sustainable growing business if we were underselling our product and not generating any profit. But I think where we try to remain competitive in any oversupplied markets is to kind of mitigate some of those increased costs by investing a bit more into technology and providing our clients with a kind of a secure self-serve environment where they can book online from 1 year, from one night up to 1 year, and just try and reduce some of those internal overheads to mitigate a bit of that cost.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask about the traveller themselves, in terms of, are you seeing any changes in the actual demographic of who's travelling, and also what they are looking for? As I'd imagine that will also influence the travel buyer, the travel manager, and how they pull together corporate programs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to differ across, you know, all providers, depending on what the profile is of their properties. If they have more of an hotel style, or they have more traditional service apartments, they're going to have different target markets. But for us, where the majority of our properties have 24-hour receptions, we're able to interact more with the guests at a property level. You know, our house hosts and our ops teams are able to have those conversations with those guests. They see them coming in into the building, and you know, can see where they're coming from. And we're definitely seeing an increase in the digital nomads, and as well as someone touched on earlier, those travellers, blending those kind of work and leisure trips a bit more. So as I said, each of our properties will have that slightly different demographic based on the size, location, and the position in the market, but we're definitely seeing more volatile behaviours, I would say, across the kind of corporate segments that we have, particularly in group bookings, that would in the past would be booked well in advance, and now they're coming in at, you know, a much shorter lead time. And so, you know, it is quite difficult to kind of manage that and plan ahead and, you know, plan your rate strategy.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Claire. I want to bring Beverly into the conversation here, and to talk about it from a buyer perspective, and actually trying to book these accommodations. What are the top 3 priorities that buyers are now considering when they are looking at selecting, browsing, researching, choosing, booking extended stay accommodation?
Such a great question, Eloise. I actually think there's 2 different types of buckets that we can put it into here. So effectively 6 different criteria. So the first bucket would be the stay perspective. So when you're thinking about the individual who's staying, first of all, it's comfort and facilities, right? So we've already talked about facilities like having a gym on site, or maybe meeting rooms. That's the digital nomads example. Or maybe there's some sustainability considerations, such as electric vehicle charging, which wouldn't have been something that people would have asked for or expected a few years ago, but something that's definitely becoming much more of a, you know, a sought after facility. An amenity. Or green energy. Again, you know, when people are having their own personal consciousness, they want to know that the building they're staying in is more sustainable. There's the safety topic, which we talked about earlier also. So, you know, if someone is feeling safe in the property, they're going to be willing to stay. If they're not feeling safe, in many cases, they're not going to be willing to stay there. And then finally, on the stay perspective, it's the location-based criteria. So if they're going to do business, which obviously most of these bookings are travel related, whether that's business travel or even global mobility or a project or an internship, they need to be near where they need to do their business. But in many of these cases, they're going to be looking, in many cases, individuals want to be able to do something on the side in their leisure time, whether that's their evening or if they're staying into the weekend. You know, having the ability to go and see leisure or tourist attractions, or, you know, restaurants, shops, etc., on hand also. So bringing those together in combination. And then from the buyer perspective, 3 things here. So with the rise of directives for organizations to be reporting on sustainability criteria, CSRD, for example, sustainability obviously becomes more of a topic. So what's the CO2 emissions per property? What other amenities are offered? Like I said, EV charging or green energy and so on. So those could be criteria that are being considered. Next is reporting, visibility, if you like, transparency, and also availability of property. So basically the technical side, the data side. So it might be around cost savings that are being produced, or it might be about even just being able to book those properties instantly, because that's not always been possible traditionally in the past, of course. So having those APIs, having those integrations are key. And then the duty of care side, as the employer, as the travel manager, you want to make sure that your employees are being looked after as well. So you've got the stay perspective from the individual's perspective, but also that duty of care as the company. And then also from, if you are going into the relocation side, as well as the place of work, it may be that schools are also being considered, and the location of schools also could be something that's being thought about. So yeah, two different perspectives, and 6 different criteria, but there's a lot of intermingling between them.
Mm-hmm. I'm often asked anecdotally around sort of facilities and amenities, and whether we're seeing greater emphasis on what is being offered over and above, say, a room. So I'm glad to hear that was touched on today.
And they need to be presented consistently. So I think, again, one of the things in the past is that the amenities and the traditional technology doesn't always present the information about all of the properties in a consistent way. So that's also important for buyers and for the travellers themselves to make educated decisions on where they would like to stay, so that everything gets presented in a consistent manner, apples to apples.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Beverly. I'd like to ask Sohila a bit of advice now, because buyers and managers are faced with a multifaceted sort of approach now, trying to balance costs or budget constraints against such things as sustainability, safety, and also quality. So how can one address these challenges in a very balanced way without compromising on I want to say quality here, and safety?
Yeah, so very good question. I think that going back to your study, Paul, I think that cutting on travel is definitely not the right solution, because you can negatively impact your business. So you need to travel in a different way then. And I call it traveling smarter. So you need to include new criteria into your policy to ensure that employees understand what is a travel that is going to have a high return on investment on their business, and really focus on them, and try to eliminate those that are going to have a very low impact on their business. So that's, for me, the most important thing. We cannot say to travelers, you just stop traveling to reduce the cost, but just make sure that you travel when it's going to have a great impact on your business. So that would be the first one. I think that combining business trips also is another initiative that we can take when we are traveling in a small region that is Middle East or Europe. No need to take 2 trips to do London, Paris, and then London, Brussels. You can do that with your star, and on top of that, you are sustainable because you are using the train versus the plane. So travel longer, combine your trips to ensure that you reduce your carbon footprint and also reduce the cost. Another thing is to eliminate, obviously, business class, for example, for regional flights, banning day trips also. It doesn't make sense to travel for a day and come back. When it comes to accommodation, I think that we need to look at sustainable accommodation. So first, when you have businesses that are static, to make sure that you have accommodations, you select preferred accommodations that are close to your business location, so that you avoid commuting between your business location and your accommodation, and try to make your trips longer as well. Try to plan ahead to understand what you need to do in your business during the year, so that if you have to travel to London, you maybe travel 10 days instead of usually 3 days, to ensure that you meet everybody that you have to meet, and ensure that you don't travel multiple times during the year. So I think that with this approach and with these very simple initiatives, you not only control your cost and limit the impact on the well-being of your traveler, but you are also having a great impact on the environment by reducing your carbon footprint. So yeah, you tick all the boxes basically.
Thank you. Beverly, I can see your hands up. Would you like to come in on this?
I did. We are definitely seeing, I wanted to say that within AltoVita, across our corporate accommodation platform and across our clients globally, we're seeing a lot of emphasis on preferred providers. And that's one of the ways that also can help to minimize the spend and make consistency in how budgets are being spent. So what I mean by that is having specific providers in certain locations where rates are being negotiated, and that's where the data and the visibility of the spend as well is important to help you to drive those negotiated fees. But that also then creates a consistency of stay, so better experience for the employees. People know what they're going to be getting. They're not always going to new locations and kind of not sure what they're going to be getting. So by having that preferred provider approach can really help to drive down the costs. It also adds value for complex cases, so maybe the less common locations. So, you know, if you have preferred providers, again, you can negotiate those rates if you know you've got a certain number going into them, and then that creates that better consistency.
Thanks, Beverly. And that actually ties in really well with my next question to Suilla, and it's looking at the criteria for evaluating potential partners or preferred partners. What is your criteria, and how do you ensure that they do align with your vision for the program?
Yeah, so you touched based on that, Eloise, during your presentation. There is a lot of things that are happening on the technology side, which is great, and I really encourage people who have good ideas to come in the business and shake up our industry that really needs to be shaken up, in my opinion. But one thing that is really important for travel managers and companies is consolidation. Consolidation from a cost standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint. We cannot afford having our employees booking through various channels. And today, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know how to put it, you decide according to whether you are a supplier, a TMC, or travel manager, but we are linked to our travel management company. And I don't think that we are going to move away from this model of consolidated travel anytime soon. So whatever you come up with, it's really important that your content can be integrated into the content of our travel management company, because again, we cannot afford having multiple booking channels. We need to be able to consolidate, have clear visibility on our data and clear visibility on where our travelers are. The second thing is to ensure that you give actually the content, the comprehensive content, to the travel management company as well, and that you don't keep fares or rates for your direct customers that you don't share with us, because you know our travelers love to challenge to challenge the travel management companies and make sure that they can find cheaper outside and come to us and be like, haha, you're not doing a good job, I found better than your program. So just make sure that the content is comprehensive and available to us. It's really for the benefit of all of us. Now, obviously, we are looking at suppliers that have sustainable initiatives that can help us understanding what our carbon footprint is and how we can offset carbon. There are some suppliers that are coming with some ideas also to offset carbon, but we are really focusing on carbon emissions. When it comes to sustainability, it covers many other aspects, like for accommodation, what do they do with their waste, with their water. We talked about electrical vehicles as well. So this is something that we start looking at also in our RFP processes.
Thank you, Suilla. There is a lot to digest there, and I can see Paul's got his hand up. So let's bring Paul back in.
Thank you. I just agree with Sohaila there, but just those that don't know SAP Concur, we do 54% of the world expense market, as well as obviously tens of billions of dollars of bookings that we pass to travel management companies. We're that cog in the wheel for Sohaila and the travelers. Just to give you a reference point, we basically see about 70% of rail bookings booked outside of TMC and online booking tool, leaked, if you want to refer to it like that. Hotel wise, it's just over 51%. So everything Sohaila said, absolutely. You want about control, bringing the cost together, etc., etc. But a problem for travel managers, it would appear certainly from where we sit, is that if 50% is being booked either directly because everybody's a travel manager when they're traveling and they want to get the best and I know better type approach. But if you've got to sort of manage that and you've got to manage the duty of care to that, it's very, very difficult. I'm not going to turn this into a sales pitch. There's a product called TripLink. If anybody wants to look at it, please do go look. I'll stop there. But there's opportunities to try and bring in those bookings from the outside world. So as I say, in expense, you can see it in TMC world and live. When you really need duty of care, it's very difficult to track everybody.
Yeah, and sorry, actually, so the reason why travelers are booking outside of the program is that suppliers are not making the rates and fares available in the program. If you make them available through our channels, there is no point for travelers to book outside. So going back to what I was saying, let's just work together to make sure that our travelers are safe and they get the best rates available.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back to Paul on this point to talk about the fragmentation, especially around content, and your thoughts, Paul, on how it is impacting the booking process and where, if at all, you see any innovations that are going to help buyers in the future. Yeah,
I mean, each travel vertical has its challenges and opportunities. So in the airline world, you've got something called new distribution capability, NDC, that we're currently fixing for, but the airlines are choosing to put better content or different content, should we say, on their .coms. Hotels, there is more and more hotels speaking to me behind the scenes saying, you know, there's so many aggregators in the marketplace now, both TMC and public aggregators. We're not sure who to back. Is it better to back ourselves and get people to come to our website rather than go through other websites where, you know, search engine optimization may be taking place and so on and so forth? So you've got that in the hotel world. In the rail world, they deliberately make it very confusing, licensing, and I can go into the detail behind that, but it's very difficult to actually hold all the relevant licenses to actually be able to book rail. So across the board, you see a lot of content fragmentation. Yes, we as an online booking tool community are trying to fix for that, and we'll bring in NDC, we'll bring in hotel aggregators from each of the TMCs. They're building their own aggregation tools, CWT and Roomit, Amex, GBT and Rest Assured, FCM Marketplace, and so on. We're bringing that into our product, and that allows for service departments, Expedia, booking, etc., into one place for consolidation, which is great news. But I still think that the one big thing that tends to get missed is once it is booked in the right channel, there is encouragement to change it outside of the channel. So a hotel may say, you know, I see you've made a booking, would you like to upgrade? And they send that directly to the traveler, not the travel manager. Or with the airline, your flight's going to be cancelled. Do you want to go on the one an hour later? Yes. And it's done on their app. And that is where we're seeing a huge amount of lack of data coming back into the industry environment to manage duty of care. So it's just one of those things we're working through. But as I say, more and more travelers act like a travel manager and they know best. And so they can work on all of these apps and decide the best thing for them to do.
Mm-hmm. On the topic of booking and perhaps booking directly, Claire, I'd be interested to hear whether corporates are booking accommodation directly through to you guys and bypassing the TMCs. This is a trend that has been discussed or read about elsewhere. How accurate is this, and are you seeing this happen?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing some of it happen to an extent. I mean, obviously we'll, you know, as an operator, have our own individual relationships with direct corporate clients, and you know, there'll be from established programs to kind of ad hoc leakage, as we call it. But I think the majority of where that comes through is probably just directly through our website. You know, people are just going on and finding us by whether it's our website, whether it's booking.com, you know, any of the other OTA channels that we appear on, and kind of booking us directly and not necessarily always inputting, you know, their company details. But if they see a rate, it's compliant with their, you know, internal rate caps, then I think we're definitely seeing some of the volume come through that way. But we're also seeing from our side, a lot of when we are, from a sales perspective, going out and targeting direct clients, more and more we're seeing, this is our TMC, you need to go by our TMC. I think that's definitely increased. Maybe just for us, I'm not sure. Obviously, I can only speak from from Eden and what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. But we're definitely seeing more pushback of this needs to go by our or can you work with our travel management company or our relocation company in order to set something up more formally. But certainly from a kind of ad hoc guest booking, we're seeing a lot coming through all of the different channels, including our own websites.
Mm-hmm. And so could you elaborate then on how your sales role or approach, I should say, is responding to these challenges around transparent distribution and content, obviously rising costs. You've got sustainability, which might bring in accreditations and how important accreditations are playing in your conversations with the corporates, TMCs, the agents. Could you elaborate on all of that, please, Claire?
Yes, I think from a distribution perspective, majority of our stock is apart hotels, so we are already available on all of the distribution channels, and we want to be visible and available where the clients are shopping, and obviously there are different costs associated to being on different channels, but as a whole, being quite a large company with a lot of units, that cost, any cost that's associated with those is kind of mitigated by not having, as many perhaps back-end reservationists or finance people working through manual booking processes. So I think the transparency there is there and it is obvious. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit about rising costs around rates and utilities and things like that, so I won't touch on that again. But I think from a sustainability perspective, that's not necessarily contributing, I don't think, to kind of rising rates. Certainly on our side, a lot of our buildings are owned and built from scratch, and that's where a big chunk of the kind of carbon footprint comes from, the building itself and from having a dated building and not being able to perhaps utilize or switch to different providers and use innovative resources, whereas most of our buildings are new, and so we've not maybe had as much burden on that side as maybe kind of others have. But I think for us, definitely the opportunities that are arising are from working more with TMCs, where we're seeing lots of, particularly the SMEs, wanting to consolidate and work more with SMEs. So definitely on the TMC side, opportunities, and because of the nature of our product, certainly getting on to the more traditional hotel programs is definitely something that we're kind of pivoting more towards. And I think that with more awareness in the market, the travel managers seem to be much more receptive to having an apartment on a traditional hotel program. The battle, I think, for us that we're still trying to work our way through is definitely we've got on the program, but how do we influence that end guest to choose us over a traditional hotel that has this big brand name? So for us, that's probably the biggest challenge, and where we're trying to shift, but we kind of need that support and championship from the travel managers in order to get those end travelers to choose us and to pick, to choose us through the right channels that's been agreed within their program.
There was a key finding from the GSAIR launch this morning, which I know, Claire, you were at, and it highlighted the fact that, or the argument was that service departments are perhaps losing their competitive edge against hotels because they'd already had their sort of peak performance post-pandemic. And we've also seen more hotels launch their own extended stay brands. So you pretty much touched on my question anyway, Claire, around how receptive are buyers now becoming to extended stay programs within service departments or apart hotels. You touched on the challenges, but could you highlight the opportunities?
Yeah, I think interestingly, I was very surprised at that statistic. I think some of the panel were as well, but again, I think there was a bit of a caveat that maybe apart hotels weren't captured within that 20%. And as I mentioned, majority of our stock is more geared towards the apart hotels with the 24-hour reception. So for us, there's a greater opportunity in the market that there's more awareness of it. A lot of it's coming from the US, and so I feel like for our product, we're benefiting from, you know, hotel brands opening and you know, opening eyes to people who wouldn't maybe part of thought of apartments before, and it's giving us more awareness, certainly. So yeah, I was quite surprised on that statistic. I definitely don't think they've lost their edge. I think there's a perceived a perception that they're more expensive, but most of the, you know, research that we do internally shows that's, you know, that's not the case. When we look at our comp sets, you know, the hotel prices are always much higher when you're looking at the same sort of standards. So I think definitely the opportunities are, you know, working with travel managers to try and, you know, branch into those hotel programs. For sure, we're definitely seeing a bit of a reduction in the reload, which we obviously heard was a resounding theme at GSAIR event this morning. So it's just a fishing where the fish are, you know, looking at different industries. So for us, you know, lots of opportunities in entertainment, and maybe some of the more traditional corporate businesses is slightly down for us. So just kind of exploring different verticals there. But certainly for us, the biggest opportunity is trying to navigate and get through onto those hotel programs, and then influence the end guest to choose us, especially if we're on an online booking platform and we're not as well-known brand as, you know, Marriott, Novotel, you know, the other brands that would typically be chosen with points and things like that. Perhaps some sort of points-based system or reward system, you know, would be a good next step if you've got a big enough brand, or perhaps some brands could get together and look at you know, a points-based system, because that seems to drive quite a bit of volume for a lot of travelers in the hotel side.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Beverly, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to add in, because this is really a very poignant topic for AltoVita. So we've been focusing on not just looking at serviced accommodation, but growing out our asset classes. So by diversifying the different asset classes, we can offer, you know, greater choice and flexibility for our clients. So whether that's travel management companies, relocation management companies, corporates direct, you know, multiple different types of customer. And what we are seeing as well is the collaboration. So one thing is around collaboration across departments. So maybe, you know, again, bringing in the different types of stay, you know, short-term business travel, the extended travel, and instead of it being, you know, separate in the sense that they are still owned by the different functions, we can bring in a different way of working for each of the different areas. So again, relocation or travel projects, etc., they can be managed in different ways, but we can accumulate all of the data and all of the spending. But also we're seeing clients call it now a corporate accommodation program instead of specifically hotel or extended stay. So they're actually, again, combining that thought, that idea.
Can I follow up, Beverly, to ask you a question around travel tech advancements? I mean, it's been touched on today around challenges, maybe trying to consolidate it and bring it all together.
Yeah,
but I want to angle it around extended stay travel programs or corporate travel programs. What do you see as actually starting as coming to the fore and helping these companies with building these programs?
First of all, based on what I was just saying, is around the flexibility. So having different processes that can be in place to manage different component travel approaches, different requirements. So you're not, and again, this is where the different functions within an organization have the ability to get the data, to create a consistent state, but they don't interrupt each other's functions. And what I mean is they can remain independent. So having that flexibility of approach and process, that is one of the things that we're seeing becoming very popular with our clients. It's also around obviously data. So as I mentioned previously, we've got a dashboard we call Alto Insight. It has lots of different features on it, a lot of data that can be taken from it, but you know, number one is transparency. So transparency around escalations, cost savings, spend, you know, savings versus budget, you know, and also where the client's spend is compared to our overall program, like what's the average daily rate for their program versus our global programs. And then also the sustainability reporting, as I mentioned before. There's also the negotiated rates piece, so the multi-rates and also negotiated multi-rates is also important. So all of those different things. And then from the stay perspective and the consumer perspective, the consumer focus is having the ability to present things in a consistent way, seeing on a map very easily where they're going to be staying, what's around in their environment, all of those things that help them to make educated choices on where they would like to stay.
I would like to come back to sustainability just for a moment, and I'm going to fire this one back over to Paul, because it was touched on this morning that actually cost challenges are superseding focus on sustainability at this moment in time, but sustainability seems to be touching a lot of the verticals or all the players within travel management programs. And on that data point that Beverly just highlighted, Paul, could you share some insight as to what efforts are underway for consistent reporting frameworks? Because there are so many out there around sustainability.
There is, and I think there's probably three things as always with sustainability. One, at point of sale, when you're actually making the booking, it's an estimate. Now, obviously, it's slightly different in the hotel space. That doesn't change, but certainly in things like the airline space, you've got no idea how full the plane is. That gets updated three weeks afterwards by IATA and so on and so forth. The second thing is it's about consistency. So whatever you've done your sustainability and you've looked at your previous spend, you obviously need to continue it, because actually it's not necessarily about what you're producing, it's are you actively reducing it, and how are you reducing things, and how are you driving it down. And three, especially in Europe now, there's legislation where you have to report your CO2 emissions under Scope 3 reporting. Now, a lot of companies are taking it from different places. Quite frankly, the only place ever to take sustainability reporting is from expense. And that's being because you don't have mileage anywhere else. You don't have your restaurant meals anywhere else at all. You don't have sundry expenses that would incur CO2 but wouldn't necessarily be booked by an online booking tool or a travel management company. So what we're seeing now is a huge amount of focus on the expense sustainability reporting, because it captures 100% of everything that a traveler would do over a space of a trip, and that's where we're seeing the standards and consistency.
Thank you. I can see we've got 5 minutes to go towards the end, and there's a couple of questions that I would like to ask Claire, if I may. I highlighted earlier 2 examples of distribution channels, the legacy GDS and some new technology platforms. Is inclusion on the GES still important, or are there more important technology players now?
I think it's both. I mean, we're a large company. We would not be successful if we didn't play across multiple different segments. And so it just, depending on which one it is, you kind of need both. We have an internal corporate portal that we offer to our clients that we built, and it manages stays up to a year. And obviously, you can't get that on the GDS. So that's a solve for our clients that have that longer length of stay and just book, our inventory and a few partner inventory partners that we have. So I think it really depends on your business mix and the type of client you're looking after and you want to fill your buildings. But for us, it's both. We have to have both. We're never going to fill 350 apartments in Lisbon that opens in 3 weeks with just one client type. And so we have to be visible on the GDS. We have to be visible and proactively pushing and promoting our own website, which again attracts a lot of leisure, but also, some business travelers. And we have to have, a corporate portal solution for our clients that are either contracted to us or use us exclusively, that they can go in and have their whole, program, their rate caps, their own cancellation policy, their individual travelers can have logins or their teams can have logins. So in short, it's for us, it's definitely both, but I guess it just depends on the size of your company and what your core market is and what clients you want to attract.
And just sticking with you for a moment, Claire, are you seeing any TMCs asking for direct connectivity into edyn to allow for additional content to be provided?
Yes, definitely, and I think that's probably the next step in the industry. I think some people maybe feel that they're there, but I'm not sure how many wheels are turning on the back end to actually make that happen. And maybe it's not as live as it appears to be, but absolutely, we definitely are, and it's kind of on our roadmap. But it's a tricky one for us to get over to the next line. And as I said, we can't, with everyone, all these different client types wanting and needing different things, it is quite difficult to provide one solve for all. So yes, we definitely are seeing that, but are we there yet as a company? No, we're not. Hopefully that's the next step, and hopefully that will be something exciting that we can announce in the future, or someone can lead the way and do so, and we can all follow suit and build on that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I can see that the clock is ticking down. We really don't have long left. I can see there are so many questions that have been shared today. Unfortunately, we can't quite get around to all of them. So what I will suggest is that we're going to keep this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes right at the end. We'll play a short video, and during that video, that should give our attendees time to scroll up and find all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers and connect with them and ask your questions directly, as I'm going to have to close off very shortly. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to flag through a couple of upcoming webinars, but for now, thank you to Beverly, Suella, Claire and Paul for your time and insights. I just need an extra 2 minutes of your time whilst I share what's coming up. So the next webinar, which is actually being held a week today, same time, 2 o'clock UK time, for Service Department News, is called Practical ESG Strategies for Operators. We talked a lot about sustainability today. Would love to see you there, and if you're interested in learning more, please sign up using the link that has been popped into the chat. And we're also gearing up for the Urban Living Festival, now in its 4th year, taking place at Mary Ward House in King's Cross on the 18th and 19th of September, bringing together all the hospitality and operational real estate asset classes under one roof. Again, we would absolutely love to see you there. Tickets are on sale, and you can find out more information via the link in the chat. And if you're interested in working with us, either across our in-person events or digital ones such as this, please do get in touch with my colleague Piers. His details are up on your screen and also in the chat. So once again, thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you to the residents for kindly being our series sponsor. There was lots to digest. I really enjoyed the conversation, but again, please do carry it on afterwards, as there's more to be said here. But once again, thank you all. Take care and enjoy the rest of your days, and see you soon.
Hello, we are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.